Dr. Mark Teague, welcome to CFO at Home. Thanks for your time today.
It's sure good to be with you. I'm looking forward to it.
A Working Man's Guide, which is your book, which we're going to spend most of our time talking about here, it's described as a value driven roadmap for working men seeking to thrive in their careers, relationships, and personal lives. So, we're going to spend the majority of our time today talking about how those principles in the book apply to money and personal finance. But before we dive into that, I really would love it if you just give us a overview of the book in general.
Yes, sir. The logical flow of the book is first of all, I write it in voice to the man, but the intended audience, the primary beneficiary, is actually the lady. And the whole notion is as men, we need to step up. We need to do our jobs. We need to be the best we can be in this modern day and age. And the first group of people, the first person to benefit from that will be the ladies. They capture the most benefits. So it's written for everyone, although I specifically call out in voice to the man. And the theme of the book is I'll start out in chapter one key principles that you must have. It's a roadmap to success for the American working class. Chapter one is key, you must have it. And then I apply those principles in chapter one to every major area that a working class family will face. I step right through them, and that's the theme. And then a summary at the end. And I think of interest to your audience will be the driving force behind that is Melissa, I have a unique story that not that many people have these days, in that we grew up in a very traditional American setting, farm and ranch. It was hardcore farm and rancher on small family farms in the Texas Panhandle. We grew up in the same community. I've got a picture of her, of me attending her second birthday party when she turned 2 years old. We grew up together. We were high school sweethearts. We married right out of high school and raised a family. We've been married almost 40 years now. But in 1986 is when we married. The farm economy was tough. Cash flow was tough. We decided we needed to make a change. So wound up in graduate school. I earned a doctorate in ag economics. We went into the banking and finance field. I dropped the ag piece. I kept the economics piece. Built a career there for about 30 years. And through that change, going from very traditional American background, traditional values. The workplace is very simple there. If you don't work, you don't eat. The incentives are very straightforward. You go into the corporate world. I built a management and an ownership career through that. It's not straightforward at all. The corporate workplace is anything but straightforward. There's every incentive you can imagine and every behavior you can imagine. I found myself needing to build a team that is focused on success, and so I found myself reaching back to those old fashioned principles and applying them in a modern world. And in doing that over the decades, just some things became so crystal clear, some principles. I wanted to write them down and share them with America because I think a key for today is we need to reach back to old fashioned principles and apply them now in a modern setting. And you will find great success doing that. And I want to champion that message and bring it to the American working class and speak in detail about how you do it in all areas of life.
As a person who was on the backside of a 30 plus year career in corporate, I certainly identify with what you were saying there.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's the real world and the corporate world. And I can't
Yes.
tell you how many times, relating this back to money for a second, I've heard in the corporate setting, we want you to manage this money like it was your money at home. And
Yes.
that's a nice thing to say, but in a corporate environment, there are so many things pushing counter to that.
Oh
Nice
my.
idea, pretty difficult to execute on. So the whole
Oh boy.
idea that you can identify with that and
Oh
this
yeah.
this whole CFO at home concept that this podcast is based on, even though I do think there are some academic principles from corporate world that you can apply to your personal finance, it is strictly, for the most part, it's academic.
You are 100% correct, Vince. That is absolutely true. And I think the passion I have in the book is that let's cut through all of that noise. Let's cut through the fog and cut through the BS. Let's get down to things that work, things that actually work, that you actually do. And that's where I speak directly to the man. It's time to lead. It's time to be leaders. And leaders can see past noise They can see past nonsense. They look to things that are fundamental, things that are foundational, a bedrock that you can stand on, speak clearly to those principles, and have no shame, no embarrassment. They don't shy away from it. They speak very clearly about it. They're not timid, and they live it. Their actions, their beliefs, and their values and their actions are aligned. They live that way. There's integrity, there's authenticity. So there's a desperate need for that in this world. Man, I can relate to your experience so well. Things get said, but that's not what gets done. And everyone sees that gap. It's time for someone to stand up and say, stop that foolishness. Let's mean what we say, what we mean, and live that way. And I wrote a book about that. I believe it passionately. So I'm with you 100%.
All right. And we're going to dive in here in just a second. I do have one other question to ask though before we get into the messages in the book. And I came across a of your book by a Reverend Burtis D. Williams,
Yes.
who may be your pastor, a very enthusiastic endorsement here. But there was a part of it that caught my attention, and I'm just a little curious about it. And
Yes,
let me
sir.
see if I can find it here. Okay, here we go. In a world inundated with noise from both the left and right news political systems, Mark Teague brings a thoughtful book anchored in timeless principles by which he still lives after a distinguished international career. Great endorsement, and that's not all. It goes on and on. But before we go into the conversation, I did want to establish the fact that unfortunately, in the world that we live in, traditional and getting back to traditional principles has become somewhat politically coded. Needless to say, we are not going down that road today. So I thought I just wanted to put that out there as a little preamble. This endorsement points that out. So just wanted to make a point of that.
Yes, that's definitely correct. Yes, Burtis is a dear friend. He is our pastor. We attend church together every week, and I had him review the book. He's an older gentleman. He's up in his 80s. He's very experienced. He's seen everything you can imagine. So I valued his input a great deal. I got him to review it while I was writing it, actually, and took his viewpoints, and I treasure that a great deal. And I would say, in response to your points, you're absolutely correct again, Vince. And I would say that highlights the need for leadership. We need somebody to stand up that has integrity, has character, say what they mean, what they say, do it, and not be afraid of the results. I think it's time for that. I think it's past time for that. That empty, hollow discussion of points that you have no intention of doing, that's nonsense. We need to get past that. We need people that will stand up on an individual basis and say no to that. Be better than that. We can be better than that. That's my challenge to the men in your audience. If you're doing that, stop it. Stop it. Be better. Be a better man than that. Your wife will be better. Your mother will be better. Your daughters will be better. They will all benefit. Stop doing that. Get a strong base of values and do them. Live by them. That's the best way to live.
I love it. I love it. And I think we teased it for long enough. I'm ready to get into it. So let's go.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
You referred to these bedrock principles that
Yes.
everything else is built off of. Can you give us, since that is the bedrock of everything we're going to talk about here, could you give us a little flyover of those principles?
Yes, I will. Let's start with I want to go about this in a secular way. This is not a church service. I'm not going to preach a sermon to you. I want to talk about the man on the street, the folks that live every day. The first thing you need to accept, principle number one, is life is a series of problems coming your way. You need to accept that. Now, here's a fundamental breaking point in today's world. We have a group that are willing to accept that. And if you accept that, you become a serious person. You become someone that can be worked with, someone that can be relied upon, that can be depended upon. You have character, you have a serious mind. We have another group of people in our country that refuse that. They think they're too good for that. They think that's a hassle. If a problem comes my way, it's somebody else's fault. I'm better, I shouldn't be hassled with that. It's a mindset. One is a serious mind, one is a child. So if you accept the fact that life is a series of problems, you're going to prepare. You're going to then build strategies, build skills to be able to address that. If not, if you reject that, You're a child, you're not ready for adult life, and we got a whole country full of them. Their problems are somebody else's fault. They won't accept it. You cannot be relied upon. You cannot be worked with. You are a great difficulty in a work environment. So there's a dividing line. It's a dividing line issue. It separates wheat from chaff, men from boys. And so I would say we start there. Do you accept the fact that life is a series of problems? I need to be prepared to deal with that. Now you have a chance to be successful. Not a guarantee, but you have a chance, and that's all you should ask for. If you reject that, life is going to eat you alive. It's going to run right over you. It's going to chew you up and spit you out. We start with that one right there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the way that I've framed that in the past is there are explanations and then there are excuses.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of rational explanations why people, to relate this back to money, are in the financial position that they are in.
Yes, sir.
It could be anything from maybe medical bills, something that has disadvantaged you somewhere along the way. Maybe you were a little irresponsible with the credit card. That's a possibility too. And some people, yes, are disadvantaged from the word go because they may come from a background that is not as affluent or not as much education as other people. There are a variety of reasons that we all start at different places out of the gate. But at the end
Yes.
of the day, when it's all said and done, while those are explanations for where you are in life, at the end of the day, it's just you.
Yes.
And as a black man in America, I accept that. Are there explanations as to why people like me, other black Americans, are statistically have less of a net worth and all of the measures we are behind? There are explanations for that, but at the end of the day, if we want to close the gap, if we want to do better for ourselves, then we just have to figure it out
Yes, sir.
and
Yeah.
not let those things hold us back.
Yes,
And
sir.
that applies in my case, it applies to your case. I would imagine that your background, you probably come from a socioeconomic background where people were starting from all different points out of the
Oh,
starting
yeah.
gate.
Yeah. That's another part of the background for Melissa and I, that we've seen all levels of financial status. We've been poor as church mice, very thin budgets, watching pennies. I remember we were at graduate school and went with a family of four. We had two young kids. And I remember I'd walk in at night, Melissa would say, "Don't eat that tomato, it's for a recipe. And don't drink the milk, that's for the kids." We'd go to McDonald's and buy one meal, get two toys. The kids would split it. Melissa and I wouldn't eat. Yeah, we know tight budgets very well. And we've been through medium sized budgets, we've been through fat budgets. But here's the thing, Vince, underneath all that, the principles that drive success are the same. They're not different. I can speak with direct experience. And here's a key thing: when I say working class, we need to define working class in a literal sense with no reference to income, because that's not the key thing. Working class is the class that is working. That's who we need to speak to. And when you think of that in that sense, it binds us together, it draws us together. We're looking at the principles which underneath are the same. The amount of money does not depend on how you handle it. How you handle it will determine how much money you have. You need to flip that around. So, your point is we need to take personal responsibility. That is an age old principle. It's true. It's colorblind. It's culture blind. It doesn't matter if you're standing in Asia or you're standing in New York City, if you're standing in Atlanta or Abilene, it's the same. We focus on those principles, they work, and you can build a good life. So now, if you reject those things, life's going to chew you up, because you can blame somebody else if you want, but they're not going to solve your problem for you. You're going to wake up the next day, it's still right there in front of you. You still have it in your lap. So you have to make some hard choices about that. And let me talk about finances and economics for a bit, Vince. That's my expertise. It's fancy these days. It's faddish and acceptable to flirt with these ideas of socialism, but basically somebody else paying your bills for you. And it's steeped in these differences in income levels. Here's the thing that if we're not careful, we talk ourselves into a disaster in this sense. There are some bedrock things in a free society that you must have for wealth to occur. If you're going to have gains in quality of life, gains in wealth creation, gains in income, there are some things that are non negotiable. They have to be in place. And one of those, I would say the very first one that you must have are secure private property rights. Without that, you cannot increase wealth in a country. You can't. There's only one way that you and I can produce and trade and reach mutual benefit. That is, I need to know what's mine. You need to know what's yours. Now we can produce, we can buy and sell, we can trade. Life gets better. Socialism is a direct contradiction to that. Secure private property rights and socialism are directly in contradiction. They do not abide together. So that's how foolish we become. We flirt with an idea in the name of gaining wealth that actually destroys wealth and has no chance of producing wealth because it undermines the very foundation that allows wealth to be created. So that's where it comes back to, do we look to the old principles and apply them in a new, fresh way? Or do we talk ourselves into stupid ideas that never have a chance of working? Pitching aside personal responsibility is a failure right from the start. It will never work. You will never solve a problem. You can blame somebody else if you like. They won't solve your problem. It's still your problem.
Yep. There is no reason to stand around waiting for Superman, as I put it.
You
So
got
I,
you got
I
it.
relate to that exactly. And I'll also go back to your point for just a second about not just socialism, but in general, and it's just a pet peeve of mine. In this society, we do have a tendency to throw around concepts that we don't understand.
Yes, sir.
We will cherry pick the
Yeah.
best part of it
Yeah.
and assume that's the whole thing. I had an interesting discussion at work today about socialized medicine simply because of what's going on in Washington right now and all of
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and the ACA and all of that.
Yes, sir.
And that's not something to debate for today, but I did try to round out the conversation I was in and point out some of the downsides of that. So we may look at Europe and different countries and say they have socialized medicine and everything's hunky dory. It's like, yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages. So
Yeah.
yeah, we really need to do a better job of educating ourselves in
Yes,
this
sir.
country before we start to embrace those type of
Yeah.
ideas. So once we have had that long hard look in the mirror and we've accepted personal responsibility in our finances, what's the next step once we've come to that reckoning that whatever situation we're in, getting out of it starts with us?
Yes, sir. I want to go back to a comment you just made, Vince, about the socialism and partial understanding of ideas. And I have an entire chapter on that, actually, chapter 7. It's about public policy. I will have a summary chapter after it, but it's the main body closing chapter. And here's something of high interest. I think you'll find this fascinating. When you talk about partial ideas, you could not be more correct than that. Most people don't realize that, socialism is one of the most failed ideas. It's a sound failure. It's failed everywhere it's been tried, but it still remains current. And most people don't understand why. There's a reason that it didn't fail alongside Marxism. Marxism went down in 1989 with the Berlin Wall. When the Iron Curtain fell, Marxism was discredited, but leftism and socialism remained alive, and there's a reason. It's one man, John Maynard Keynes. He's the one that keeps it current, keeps it active. And I spent an entire chapter breaking that down. It's time to look hard at the theory and the prognosis and the statements of John Maynard Keynes. The truth is, Keynesian economics is a fraud. It's a fraud right from the start. He knew it. He danced around it and he would wave his hands around it, but it's based upon fraudulent assumptions. It has no chance of working, but it's the cover, it's the academic cover, the academic credo that gets used to push leftism to no end. So why do we still talk about socialism when it's a known failure? Because of John Maynard Keynes. He put equations behind it. He put a theory that still has a currency. But the truth is, it's a fraud. I show clearly in the book why it's a fraud. I spell it out in terms of mathematical terms. It's time for people that know better, and I'm one of those, to speak up very clearly, very forcefully, in detailed terms about why that is, and take socialism on. It cannot produce a wealthy society. It cannot produce the kind of country that we want. It's simply, you cannot pay each other's bills. That's just the bottom line. It will not work. It does not work. There's no future there. But John Maynard Keynes and his work continues to be used to promote it. His work is fraudulent. It is not accurate. It does not work.
Wait, now you've given me homework. That is a name that I haven't heard since college, and I've pretty
Yep.
much forgotten everything I was taught. But now
Yep.
you've piqued my interest, so I'm going to do my research on that one.
Read chapter 7, start there, and then you can go from there. That is the underpinning that makes it current. It's time to just torpedo it directly and put it to bed.
Love it. All right, back to the points. We were
Yes.
talking about that personal responsibility. Once we've accepted that, as far as our finances are concerned, regardless of the situation we're in, what's the next step?
I would say, Vince, the next thing that I would emphasize to your audience is that once you accept life for what it is in the areas, and we'll stick with personal finance, there's something else you need to ask, a deep question. What do you stand on? What's your foundation? What is the bedrock that you build your life on? You're going to need that. Life is not going to be kind. It's not going to be easy. It's going to come at you in waves. You're going to have problems that you have no idea how to handle. They're going to shake you and rattle you. What do you stand on? That's going to determine how well you come out on the other side. Every human has to ask that question. What is your base? What is your foundation? Now, I'll speak clearly to mine, what mine is. I choose the Almighty. I choose the God of the Hebrews. I choose the scriptures. That's what I stand on. You need a North Star. You need a guidepost. You need something that takes you back to what is true. Now, you can choose whatever that is. Every human is free to pick what they like, but you're going to have to choose one. If you don't choose one, life is going to run over you. You have nothing to stand on. You need something bigger than yourself. Some people say, I'm my own standard. I say to that, good luck. I'm flawed. If I use myself as a standard, I just circle right back around to my flaws and my weaknesses. I need something bigger than that. I need something that was here before I got here, something that'll be here after I'm gone, something that is eternal. And choose carefully. That is important. Once you choose that, now you have something to stand on. You can build from there.
And I relate personally 100% to what you're saying because I worship the same God you do.
Yes, sir.
But I will challenge this a little bit or ask you to
Yeah.
dig in just a little bit because I can
Yeah.
imagine there are people who will listen to this conversation and maybe not get the connection. So, why, in order to be financially successful, to achieve my financial goals, why is this important in terms of having a belief, having a North Star?
Yes, sir. It's very simple. Many of the problems that you're going to face are moral in nature. They're not just a physical issue. They're not just a medical issue. They're not just a tangible issue. They bleed into intangible things. Here's a good one: marriage. Let's talk about marriage for a moment. The stats are clear. I got myself up on all the social stats, and I have an entire chapter on that as well. The stats have caught up to traditional values. Do you want to be wealthier in life, have more money? Get married and stay married. Do you want to have better health in life? Get married and stay married. Do you want to be happier, have more contentment over the course of your life? Get married and stay married. Do you want to live longer, have more years? Get married and stay married. We have a marriage gap developing in this country. Those that commit to it, those that stick with it, they have a better life, and it is a statistical fact on the whole. Now, of course, you have various circumstances, various things that happen, but when you look at groups and you look at the numbers, it proves out clearly. Now, how do you view marriage? That's a moral issue. It is inherently a moral choice. That's where you go back to your foundation. You need a framework. You want to build your own? Yeah, go right ahead. You're free to do that. That's stupid because we have a lot of information in front of us that we can use. And that's where I say my guide is that's the scriptures. It's the Almighty. Now, you can choose many other frameworks. And here in a moment, I think I'll elaborate on to a person with no faith, they simply do not believe, to the atheist. I would offer a framework that they can use. But here, the thing is, to answer your question directly, Vince, many problems that you face, a lot of them are moral in nature. You need something to give you a frame of reference. You need that North Star to guide your morals. And marriage probably is a top example. What you believe about marriage will determine what you do. What is your standard? If it's you, your chances of failure go way up. If it's what the Almighty says about marriage, you've got a much better chance.
And there are statistics and studies that I have seen that show that correlation between wealth and marriage. So
Yes,
that is something, even if you don't understand the why,
yes,
the stats speak for themselves.
yes.
And you're clearly a guy who loves a good stat.
Yep.
Are there any stats or statistics that show a correlation between having a foundation, whether that foundation is spiritual or not, whether or not it's a belief in God or not, that shows a correlation between having a foundation and financial success?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's true. And it ties into that moral framework. I would point you to chapter 2 in my book. I put a lot of work into the references, into the studies, and I do a hardcore academic studies, professional journal articles where the best studies in marriage are cohort studies. So you take people that are married at this point in time, you get 2 or 3 thousand, and you follow them for years. Like 30 years, 15 to 30 years, and you see the outcomes. You see the effect on health, wealth, happiness, on children, etc. And here's the key thing, Vince. You if you just take all marriages, the divorce rate is right around 50%. It's 42 to 45% divorce. If you include separation, it gets up near 50%. So if you're just any Joe out there, you get married, it's about a coin toss over the course of a lifetime, not in a year, but over the course of your lifetime in marriage, about half survive. Here's the interesting thing. You dig in and you look at the half that do survive. Now you start looking at the characteristics that drive that. Why do you have a longer marriage that leads to better health, more wealth, better happiness, better circumstance for the kids? Why do you have that? You look at the attributes. You know what the number one thing is right at the top of the list? Faith, church attendance, prayer. You're a spiritual person. You make a spiritual commitment. Your marriage is going to increase. You can find cohorts in there where the chance of marriage is near zero. You can take that number down. It's not like I start marriage, I got a 50-50 chance. Yeah, if you do nothing, and you stop thinking and you have no awareness, no cognizant. But if you take affirmative action, you take charge of the things that you can control, you guide your life in a certain way, and faith is a key one. I say there's a marriage gap, there's also a church attendance gap. The discrepancy between folks that faithfully pursue spiritual matters and those that have no regard for it is growing vast. It's becoming very wide because those things give you values, those things give you permanence. Now you have a framework within which to make decisions. And it's very simple. So you have that argument with your wife, and you're going to have one. It's a problem that's coming. You will not avoid it. What's the framework within which you solve that? Is it the scriptures which say, when God says directly in first person, I hate divorce? He says that clearly in first terms. Is that rolling around in your head? Or do you say, I don't like this person, I'm tired of arguing, I'm gone? Values. Values inform your morality. Morality informs your choices. That informs your life. Yeah, there is an absolute direct tie. between faith, spirituality, these outcomes in life being better and worse. No question about it. Stats show it.
Yeah, and the connection between marriage and maintaining a marriage and financial success. I think that's even more intuitive to understand
Yes.
because just from a practical perspective, marriage is a lot of things. Among those things, it's a legal contract.
Yes, sir.
When and
Yes.
if that legal contract is broken, all of the wealth that hopefully the two of you have been building together, goes its own separate ways. And all of a sudden, as opposed to one unit with X amount of wealth, you have two units which maybe have half of that wealth.
That's
Now,
exactly right.
if you're Jeff Bezos, that works out for you. If
Yeah.
you are the working man,
There you go.
to go back to your book, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're just clawing to get
Yep.
there,
Yeah.
and whatever you've amassed, if all of a sudden half of it goes away and in two different directions, you've lost all your momentum, and
Yes, sir.
it's just financial momentum, and it's a tough climb even if the two of you working together.
You got it right. And I tell you, I'll refer to the personal work that I did in my banking career. I started out as an econometrician, and I built my career down the data science route and strategy, et cetera. We did a ton of econometric modeling around causes that are relevant to a business plan. One of those is obviously bankruptcy. What's the leading cause of a bankruptcy? The number one thing, divorce. That is the leading cause of bankruptcy. People split up exactly as you described it. Now it's you don't even get half. You got to pay a lawyer out of that. You take your wealth, you split it, you take a chunk out for legal fees, and then you split up what's left. That causes bankruptcy at a higher rate than anything. The second one is disease. You get sick. People get sick. They can't go to work. They were tight before, and then it puts them underwater afterward. But the number one cause, leading cause of bankruptcy, is divorce.
So
Morality matters.
yes, it does. It does. So you teased earlier that there is a way for the non-believer, be they a hardcore atheist or just an agnostic or just somebody who, for whatever reason, has not gotten to faith.
Yep.
There is a way for them to apply a framework to their
Yes.
lives
Yes.
in order to build that foundation. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a great question. Let's go back to simple questions. I like simple questions. They lead you to powerful places. I know you use that in your business. You can solve many problems by asking simple questions and takes you to a logical, solid answer. And here's the thing. When we have this discussion, we're talking about the fundamentals of faith, especially with those that don't believe or they're skeptical. Let's start here. Let's go to the very core, the very heart, the very bedrock of faith, what it is at its very heart. Now, we associate many things with the faith that they're actually an experience of faith, and there's a lot of sentiment that goes with that, and that's a very good thing. When you worship, when you fellowship, when you pray, when you study scriptures, the sentiment can be overwhelming. That's a grand thing. But it's a gift from the Almighty. But that's not the very core of it. Here's what faith is at its core. Rationality, Vince, leads you to faith. Faith is a rational response to a rational question. It works like this. There are twin pillars, a twin pillar of witness that's been in place since the beginning of time. It's not tied to culture, it's not tied to race, it's not tied to economic well being. It's in front of every human, and that is just go outside and look up. Look at this universe. It takes you to a question. Where'd that come from? How'd that start? Did it just pop up? You have two answers to that question, only two. It's either a random accident, it just happened to be here, we have no idea, I don't know, I don't care, I'm going to go on without bothering with that nonsense, or you look at it and say, that's designed, that's made, that's not a random accident, and therefore there's a designer, there's a maker. Faith says, I bow my knee to that maker. I don't know everything about him, but I bow my knee. I serve him. I serve the God that made that. You have that pillar of physical creation. Is it an accident? I would challenge someone to sit down, look at the periodic table of elements. There's no sentiment attached to that whatsoever. It's pure rationality. Look at the structure, look at the order, look at the function, look at the architecture, the design. Tell me that's an accident. I look at that and say, there's no way that's an accident. That's impossible. I step outside, I look up at the sun. So did that just pop up? That just happened to show up one of these days? We benefit from it? No, I say that is designed, it's made. There's no way that's an accident. That's down the path of faith, and I serve the one that made it. Now, you can say, here's to the person that would be an atheist or an unbeliever. You're looking at that, you can say that's an accident. I would say maybe, but it's one heck of an accident. So here's the thing, when you're standing there, rationality leads you to faith. Faith is a rational response to that rational question. Where did these things come from? The second witness is the human soul. Look within ourselves. There is a moral calculus that goes on that is common to every human being. Ask yourself, is anybody that likes to be lied to?
Absolutely not.
No. And if you don't want to be lied to, what's the next step? Well, maybe I shouldn't lie to you. If I don't want you lying to me, maybe I shouldn't lie to you. That is common to every human at all times, at all places, from the beginning of time. There's a moral calculus inside of us. Is that an accident? Did that just happen to pop up? Or is that made? I say it's made. It's the image of the Almighty that rests within the human soul. Now, we stand here as two different people. Me as a man of faith, I say this world is made. I say the human heart is made. You can look at that and you can say, nope, it's a random accident. Okay, so now ask yourself, what are the implications to that question, to the answer I give? I have rationality leads me to that question of faith. I have two potential answers, random accident or made. If I say it's a random accident, what's behind that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing there. There's no purpose, there's no meaning, there's no hope, there's no love, no faith. A universe driven by random blindness has nothing there. There's no substance whatsoever. It's a pure accident. There's no morality, there's no common moral code. Now, if you look at the other side, if I say it's made, what's behind that? Everything is behind that. Love, faith, joy, hope, gentleness, nobility, courage, altruism. Everything the human heart needs is behind that. So here's what I would say to my atheist friends. If you want to stand there and say everything that you experience in life in terms of physical creation and the human soul is a random accident, here's what you do. Mimic those that accept the eternal reality of values. Look at what they do, mimic the way they live. And you know what? That's what they do, Vince. That's how you get it. You can either acknowledge the source, and what you do is commit pleasures. If I take an act of love, I'm not creating love, it was already there. If I say there's meaning in life, I don't create meaning, it's already there. I'm choosing to walk in it. I'm choosing to avail myself of it. So if you're an atheist, you don't want to believe in that source. Believe in the people that do. Watch how they live. See how their life plays out. The stats are crystal clear. They have a better life. Mimic that. And that's what they do. Here's a clever trick of the atheists these days. There is no faith. There is no God. The universe is blind and random. Oh, and I find meaning in life by doing this. Oh, do you now? So you acknowledge there is meaning and purpose in life. How did that get there? How did that come about? What's the source? You can benefit from those intangibles by simply acting on them, even if you don't believe in the source. That's what an atheist, that's what I would say to my atheist friends. Find those that believe, look at how they live, mimic the values that they adopt, you'll have a better life. It's better than nothing.
There are so many different directions that I could take this. I'm going to try to stick to a few points
Yes,
that I
sir.
wrote down here. So, first of all, I think we do need to say out loud, I don't know any personally. I don't know if you know any personally, but logic would lead me to assume that there are some very financially successful atheists. We have to acknowledge that just to
Yes,
keep
sir.
our intellectual honesty going here. But I understand what you're saying. You're speaking from personal experience as much as anything else. You are a very successful, accomplished person. If a person comes to you and asks you how you achieve what you've achieved in life, you have to give them your point of reference. So
Yes.
even if you are talking to an atheist, a financially unsuccessful atheist,
Yeah.
you can't tell them how that other financially successful atheist got to where they are because you
Yeah.
don't know. That's not your personal experience. But you
Yeah.
can tell them that the principles that your faith leads you to
Yes.
is the secret to your success. And you know that those principles are universal. So even if you are not a person of faith, you can apply those same principles. You can only give advice, heartfelt advice from your personal experiences. So we're not saying that there's no such thing as a financially successful atheist,
Nope.
but
Nope.
you how they did that, I don't know. You don't know because
Yeah.
that's not our lived experience. So I
Yeah.
did
You're right.
want to acknowledge that,
Yes.
but it seems to me I wrote down a few key words you were talking.
Yes. Sir.
The first one I wrote down without you prompting me, I wrote down a couple others that you mentioned, is humility.
Yes, sir.
Because this is just my pet peeve. I believe that there are far more people out there that are in the middle of belief than there are hardcore atheists.
Yes, sir.
So there are people, and I know them, who can look up at the night sky and say, wow, this had to be created. They can't quite make it to believing whether or not that creation is explained by Christianity or Buddhism or whatever. That's a
Yes.
whole different
Yes.
topic. But
Yes.
at least they have the humility to
Yes.
acknowledge the fact, hey, there's something going on here
Yeah.
that is more than me. If
Yes,
you
sir.
have that humility along with that acknowledgement that we were talking about, that bedrock principle of bad things happen, you just put those two things together. You say, hey, bad things happen to good people, and I'm going to have to take responsibility for this thing and work my way out of it.
That's a great way to say it.
I have a humility
Yes.
about me that helps me to accept that as opposed
Yeah.
to deflecting and trying to blame that on someone else.
Yes, sir.
So I'm taking personal responsibility. I'm humbled. I'm awed. That positions you when you're just that wide open. That positions you to be one very receptive to direction. And really, the humility helps you reinforce the first principle,
Yes,
the,
sir.
the first idea of personal responsibility. Those two
Yes.
things together are powerful.
Oh boy. Man, I can't say it better than that, Vince. That's fantastic. That's exactly right. And I'd also add that back to the point about accepting life for what it is, it's a series of problems. That's actually the first sign that you've done that humility. You get over yourself, you buckle down, you go to work, and you're ready to get something done. It is a dividing line issue. You might say it's between the humble and the arrogant. There's a night and day difference between the two. And if you're an atheist, you can be either one. You can adopt either habit. You can be arrogant, you can be humble and work well with others. So, yeah, the good principles of character are not dependent on where and if and when you go to church. You can pick it up from a lot of different places. I'm amazed. I do a lot of reading of the ancients, Aristotle and Plato and Marcus Aurelius. If you read those guys, it's amazing the insight that they had. Just because they're honest, they work hard, they seek what is true, you're going to find yourself in a very similar place across all times and all peoples because you seek what works. You seek those bedrock principles. Said, my friend.
Yep, absolutely. You led me there. And I learned that from you as a part of this conversation. The other thing that you did mention that I noted was also the whole concept of finding meaning and finding purpose.
Yes,
Belief in a higher power is all about finding meaning and
yes,
purpose.
yes,
And meaning and purpose, to bring it back to personal finance, even you used the word earlier, North Star. That is the thing that, in my experience, really helps you to get through the tough financial times.
yes, sir.
If you have
Yes,
meaning and you have purpose and you have financial goals that are synchronized with that meaning and purpose, even when life gets to life and things are going against you, that meaning and that purpose keeps you going.
yes, sir.
And faith, again, in a higher power, is one of the purest ways of finding meaning and purpose.
Yes,
You
sir.
can find meaning and purpose in all kinds of things. You can find meaning and purpose in getting that next promotion or hitting a certain net worth or marrying that person or whatever.
Yeah,
At my age, and this is just
yeah,
my experience,
yeah,
every one of those things has a very limited lifespan in
yes,
terms of meaning. If you're looking at them to find ultimate meaning,
yes,
they're
sir.
they're great things, but they don't stand the test of time if
Yes,
you
sir.
believe that's it. The
Yes, sir.
more grounded you are in an unshakable faith,
Yes.
the more you can stay anchored to a financial goal.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more. That the heart is made for those intangible things. It's interesting that we're not satisfied with the tangible, physical things, the material things, homes, cars, the money, etc. The heart yearns for the intangible things. Love, joy, faith, hope, altruism, courage, nobility, dignity. All of those things fill our hearts. That's what we really need. And I would say it like this: build your life on the intangibles. And on that basis, seek the tangible. You'll have a better life. You'll satisfy the needs of the human heart. And money is not an object, money is a tool. Money is something that you use to get where you're going. And when you build your heart around those things of purpose, now you're going to have discipline. You're going to have a sound mind. You're going to put things in perspective, and you're going to have a plan that works. And money will be a part of that plan. You'll have a budget. You'll have goals. You'll have things worked out, and you're not going to get distracted with those temporal, short-term things. You are grounded in the eternal things, the things that have always been, the things that always will be. Those are bedrock. Those things are foundation. You will get through hard times by doing that. You're exactly right.
And it may be a little counterintuitive, but in your opinion, is realizing that money is a tool,
Yes,
is that a key to what I would just call financial success, gaining more
absolutely.
money? So actually going after money for money's sake is one thing, but going after it as a tool, because I think if you ask the simple majority of people, the whole thing, you just keep asking them why when it comes to money. If they want to be wealthy, why do you want to be wealthy? Why do you want to drive that car? Why do you want to live in that house? That type of thing. If you ask them enough questions, the question ultimately goes beyond money. they're
Yes,
they're trying to impress, they're trying to improve their self-esteem, they're trying
yes,
to maybe have power of some sort.
yes,
I think very few people are literally just Scrooge McDuck and just want a vault full of money that they can just bathe in.
yeah.
It's usually something greater than that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you accept that and you realize that, then you realize that money is just a tool to
Yes,
get to whatever that goal is. And
yes,
if you're honest with yourself and say that and just look at that goal and you go, "Oh my goodness, I want to feel better about myself, but I'm trying to do it with a house and a car." Just
exactly.
facing that,
Yes,
I
sir.
think helps to put things in perspective.
Yes, sir. And I would take that back to your earlier question, Vince, about why do these moral things matter? You can't escape it. You work on all the physical things, the material things in life, you're going to run into moral things. The moral things are the deeper things. And it often comes back to that. And the only way to have an ordered life, a structured life that brings contentment, is to have priorities that are set by purpose. And then money absolutely becomes a tool. It's something you're using to get where you need to go and want to go in life. It does not own you, it does not control you because it can never satisfy you. You never get enough. If money is your goal, your object, you'll never have enough. And that's why I define working class the way I do. It's the class that is working. If you take the income of a lot of folks that think they should have more, double it, they're going to have the same problems they have today. You could triple it. They'll still have the same problems. You need a budget, you need a plan, you need a heart that's filled with contentment. That is aside from money. That comes first. You solve that first. Now, then the money becomes it's a matter of getting on a spreadsheet, looking at your expenses, looking at your revenue, making a plan. If you need more revenue, you need to have a career plan with skills, et cetera, et cetera. Now you get into the fundamentals of saving and spending. But if you don't have those intangibles right, you'll never get your mind clear on the tangibles. You're going to be distracted and pulled to the side, and it'll never be clear. So, that is a very important point in life.
Awesome, Mark. This is usually the time in a conversation where I acknowledge the fact with a great guest like yourself that we've just scratched the surface of,
Yes,
of,
sir.
of, of the conversation. But luckily, you have an entire book on this subject, A
Yes.
Working Man's Guide. We will put links in the show notes so people can access that. Your online headquarters is a workingmansguide.com. So
Yes, sir.
that's very easy and direct to the book.
Yep.
So not only do you have the book, you actually have a couple of guides that are associated with the book. One focused on finances and one focused more, I believe, more just on the subject of success. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about those.
The first one definitely is about finance. It's taking the concepts in the book and applying it to personal finance. I take two concepts actually, the problem solving framework and management technique, how you manage yourself, how you manage a company, and how you can manage personal challenges like money. It's called the impact index. I put those together for a personal finance exercise. And then the next one is stress to success, is basically how to manage stress so that you're not overwhelmed. You don't have to be overwhelmed with problems. There are principles you can use to make them manageable. And I'll say this quickly for your audience. One of the key one is don't let problems aggregate. Many times we're facing a problem that seems unsolvable. It's actually five or six problems. You've let them ball up together. Men are especially terrible about that. I got this big issue. I'm mad. I'm frustrated. It's actually five or six issues. Break it down, get it down into its separable components, prioritize them, work them one at a time, one or two, three at the most, usually one or two, then work down the list. Your ability, your capacity to handle stress, your capacity to produce all go up significantly. You can actually get something done. If you let five or six problems bind together, you're looking at one big problem, it's going to beat you. But you need to break it down. Start there. Simplify. Simplify. That's the power of problem solving.
Yeah, and I can see that applying again the finances in a couple of ways.
Yes.
So sometimes that's how small financial problems become big financial problems.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes one of the things that you didn't face up to is your financial situation, and that creates those other problems.
Yes.
And sometimes the financial issues are one of the harder to face up to. There's something about facing that monster under the bed
Yes.
that makes a lot of people hesitate, but you're
Yes, sir.
absolutely right. And all of life is connected.
Yeah.
So at the very least in your financial life, don't let those financial issues create issues in multiple parts of your life. Don't let it
Yes, sir.
create a relationship issue. Don't let it
Yes, sir.
create an issue at work, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yes, sir.
I'm 100% with you on that. So, Mark, again, one other quick thing. Are there any social media accounts maybe that our listeners can follow to get more of your wisdom?
Yes, sir. The main one will be the website, workingmansguide.com, drop the apostrophe, but also Facebook /Dr. Mark L. Teague and /A Working Man's Guide on Facebook, Instagram /Dr. Mark L. Teague, and LinkedIn /IN/Dr. Mark L. Teague. There's a lot of information there. I have actually has some educational series of videos. I talk about the national debt. I talk about the Federal Reserve. I'm talking also about career development. I have a series of videos there. I think your listeners will enjoy that.
I love it. And I'm such a wonk on some of those financial and economic issues. I'm definitely going to check that out myself.
Excellent. Man, you got to read chapter 7, Vince. I want to hear what you have to say. Get educated on John Maynard Keynes. That dude has caused more damage, I'm telling you. It continues to this day. It's ridiculous. It's time to put that to bed.
The only thing I remember about John Maynard Keynes is my professor in college. I believe he was from Africa. And the way he pronounced it, it just sounded so impressive. It was John Maynard Keynes. And, and,
There
and,
you
and
go.
he would say it, and it just sounded so impressive. But now
Yep.
I have to go back and revisit that whole situation, which I'm going to love.
That's what
So,
Keynes did for the left. He gave them cover. He's very smart, very intellectual, and his theories are a bunch of garbage. So somebody needs to call him on it. I'm doing it.
I love it. I love it. Mark, again, I really appreciate the conversation.
Yes,
And this
sir.
has been a conversation, but no way, shape, or form has this been an interview. This has just been a heartfelt
Yes.
conversation. You
Yes.
are a man of principle, a man who is definitely sure of what he believes in,
Yep.
and you're spreading the message that you're spreading from the heart. You can't ask for more than that.
Yep.
Thanks for your time.
Yes,
Thanks for
sir.
being on CFO at home today.
It's a pleasure, Vince. You're such a great host. Thank you so much. Great conversation.